Okay, so to continue, we've created an object from the job detail structure, and he continues to assign um, basically the continues to assign whatever the person has selected. The user selects in the drop-down box combo boxes or enters in the text boxes, um, and all these text boxes, and keeps, these will be assigned to these variables here. Everything from the timeout, delay, handshake, iterations, and then here, like use hex values here if the data entry type is checked. Obviously, you're not going to use those if that radio button's not checked. If the binary is checked, then you won't use that. Then you use the bit values, and that's where this part here comes into to play. This whole section here is for this binary. You're customizing a byte here to send and clicking these check boxes. So right here it's saying basically if say in this case bit 8 box here is checked, this question mark means that if this first statement is true, then do whatever's here. If this first statement here is not true, then do what's over here on the other side of the colon. So if bit 8 the checkbox is checked, which it is here, then it'll do this first section in front of the colon, and basically take the 1 byte and shift it 7 places to the left. And if this was not checked, this statement becomes false, this condition becomes false, and then you'll execute this other side of the colon, which is a 0, and bit 8 will be set to 0. And so you do that for each one of these to create your customized byte. And okay, so then we get here to the thread pool. This thread proc method is down here. This is a huge method. It's the main worker thread, and it's doing, like it says, all the work. It is a method that will open up the serial port. It also will tell you the status of things as it runs through this method here. This diagnostics invoke. Diagnostics is the name of this text box here, and it's invoking a delegate because the GUI is on a separate thread from the main worker thread. You need to use a delegate to print anything into this box. If you don't use a delegate, then you'll throw an exception because you're crossing threads. You're going from your main worker thread here and created by this thread proc method, and you're going over to your GUI, your graphic user interface, which is running on another thread. And if you don't use a delegate, then it won't work. And that's what each one of these statements you see here, diagnostics invoke, you'll see them through this whole method, and it'll be printing out into the diagnostics text box whatever it's saying here. You see a bunch of them waiting for serial port to open, giving you a list of in a string of all the settings that you've selected in your text boxes and your combo boxes. It'll write that out to your diagnostics text box. And then this method, remember we're still in the thread proc method. This method also will open up, depending on whether you've checked your hex values or your binary. It'll set up a bunch of bytes to be transmitted once the port is open, to be sent over the line, or if the binary is selected, a single byte that will be sent over the line, your serial line, to wherever you're sending it. Okay, so basically when this thread pool queue user work item we'll call this thread proc method, like I said, and then it'll execute from a pool of threads. So part of the .NET class, if you look up thread pool, queue user work item, it queues a method for execution. The method executes when a thread pool thread becomes available. It's an overloaded member. You got your two types. He's using this bottom one, has the wait callback with an object. So it queues a method for execution and specifies an object containing data to be used by the method. So the where is it here? Yeah, here's the object here. The state info object is what's going to be used that is specifying the data to be used in the thread. So here, like I said, we this part, this is part of the, remember, it's part of the this is part of the send data button click event here. So that will start the thread pool queue user work item and create a pool of threads, and when one's available, we'll execute this the thread proc. Okay, so here we've got well, here I'm not going to get into the threads right now. I think what I'll do is just I'll start explaining the thread proc method here and what goes on when this method is called by the queue user work item, and then we'll get into what's going on with the threads as the send button. As the send, as we, first when we load up the form, what threads run, which one isn't, and then when the send button is clicked, what's going to happen there. We'll get into that detail later. But let me first explain this thread proc method. There's a lot of stuff in here. So basically, like I explained before, the diagnostic text box. The first thing here, it'll say thread that started, so it's creating a thread. And this is that delegate I told you about that will send this string over to the GUI. So like here, when we load the form up, we click the send button event. So here you've got serial thread started. So you can see right here what's happened is they've called that delegate, and then it sent cross thread, sent serial thread started over here to the text box. Okay, so then the this part here, the next part, they're going to try to open up the serial port. Once again, another diagnostics invoke, saying opening serial port. Right here, the second line, opening serial port. That's all that's saying. That's all these are doing. Remember, these are not that complicated. Like I said, they're just sending text. All these diagnostics invokes are just sending text to that text box. Here, obviously, we're creating a serial port instance of the serial port class, an object, serial port class, and then as part of the serial port class, you set up the parameters. If you go to .NET and you look up your serial port class, you see you have a series of overloaded constructors where you can specify, or basically you can let serial port class set your parameters, your parity, your baud rate, whatever, or you can get more detailed. With each overload here, with each constructor, exactly what you want to set. Obviously here, he's using he wants a lot of detail. He wants to set up exactly the details of the port, the baud, the parity. data bits, the stop bits, and the COM port, and the timeout, the handshake encoding, and then the port gets opened. So remember these were the variables that were set back here. So let's look at the first one here then. Alright, so the job .mCOM port. So you go to the mCOM port variable, and obviously it's set to the text of the port name text box, which remember was COM7. So here we're getting this, setting this, basically this first part of your serial port, your serial class, setting the first parameter, and then each parameter afterwards, all based on those variables that we took from the structure and we assigned to either the text box, combo boxes, so that's what's going on with this line. And obviously the rest of it here, the timeouts, the handshake, the encoding up to this, these are all the parameters being set. And also this using statement, that's not the same as using statement up here. I'm no expert at this, but I think it has something to do with garbage collection, and whatever you use inside from your using statement will be the memory will be cleared when it's done, I guess, something like that, or has something to do with that. I don't know the details. And of course this line here, this is actually going to open our port, and then another call to that delegate where it says waiting for the serial port to open, press stop if nothing happens. And then it'll run through, if you open if the serial port is there available and it is opened, it'll start printing out the rest of these. But in this case I don't have anything hooked up, so when I execute that thread proc method, you can see there's exception. It threw an exception because there's no COM port open, obviously. And okay, so when the port's open, it'll print out waiting for serial port to open, press stop, nothing happens. Then here we've got more messages sending. Here if the port is not open, and stop thread wait one, that's the manual reset event class. I don't even understand this statement here. And do nothing if these are true. I'll have to come back to that because I don't understand what's going on there. Diagnostics invoke, okay, it's printing out. You got this question mark. Remember, anything in front of the question mark, this condition in this case is the port open. If the port is open, then print open to the diagnostics box. If the port is not open, then print closed. Then another line will be written to the text box, current serial port settings, and then he's created a string here with formatted so they can include all the port name, the baud rate, the parity, data bits, stop bits, handshake, timeout, encoding. All that set to string, and then using the delegate here, he calls that string and has it printed out to the text box. I'll pick up next installment here.